a fall classic, a home run for the ages, and World Series tickets are on sale in Toronto. This is Now You Know. I'm Rob Snow.
Deeper than the headlines.
The answers you need to know.
This is Now You Know with Rob Snow on News Radio.
Here comes the 3-2. He got him! Toronto Blue Jays are going to the World Series.
Sportsnet's Dan Schulman with the history-making call. It was a night filled with drama and frayed nerves as the Toronto Blue Jays edged past the Seattle Mariners in the seventh game of the American League Championship Series. For the first two-thirds of the game, not much was happening for the Blue Jays. Seattle jumped out to an early lead, thanks to a Toronto area guy, Josh Naylor, who's from Mississauga.
Past a diving Guerrero and into right, a base hit. Rodriguez getting the wave and will come in to score the first run of the night.
The Jays would even things up in the bottom of the first with George Springer and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on base for the Jays. Up came Dalton Varsho with 2 outs.
And another one, and it's rolled up the middle and into center. Springer will come in to score. Guerrero around to third, and Varsho with an RBI single to tie the game.
But after that run in the first inning, the Jays' bats fell silent, shut down by Mariners starter George Kirby. Meanwhile, the Mariners did what they do best, hit home runs. And Jays starter Shane Bieber just wasn't that sharp.
This one, though, is up in the zone. It's hit a long way, and it's gone. A slider up, and Rodriguez takes Bieber deep to give the Mariners a 2-1 lead.
It was in the top of the third. Bieber lasted 3 2/3, and then the Jays turned to the hard-throwing Louis Varland, who in the fifth inning had to face the mighty Mariners slugger Cal Raleigh.
Both managers pushing some buttons or thinking about it right now. High fly ball to deep right field. Barger back at the wall, and it is gone into the Mariner pen. Cal Raleigh with his 4th home run of the series. And the Mariners now lead 3-1.
And the Jays couldn't seem to get anything going in their own half of the fifth inning. They couldn't score in the sixth inning either. The Rogers Center was filled with a quiet nervousness. But then came the bottom of the seventh. Isaiah Kinner-Falefa led off the inning with a single. Then Addison Barger hit a single of his own. Andres Jimenez delivered a lovely sacrifice bunt to move the runners into scoring position. And that brought George Springer to the plate for one of the defining moments in the history of the Toronto Blue Jays.
Exactly the part of the lineup you want up in a situation like this. And a swing and a fly ball to left field. Back goes Arozarena. She's gone!
Look at the dugout. Everybody knows that he's hit it out and put the Blue Jays ahead. What a season George has had. And what a swing that is.
And what a swing that was. That blast vaulted the Jays into the lead, and Seattle could not answer back in either the 8th or the 9th innings. Final score 4-3. And as always, the Jays general manager, John Schneider, who has been with the Toronto Blue Jays for 24 seasons, couldn't have been more colorful in talking about what that moment meant.
This is unbelievable for me. This is my 24th year with this organization, and I love it here. These fans, this country, you deserve all of this. It's not about me, it's about every single one that's behind me, and I couldn't be happier to represent this team.
This whole playoff run for the Jays has been a coming out party for Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He was named MVP of the series and was fighting back tears right after the game while he was speaking with Sportsnet's Hazel May.
You were 16 years old when you signed with this organization, and now you are going to the World Series, Vladdy. If you can just give us a few words, how are you feeling right now?
Amen. We do this for the city, man. We do this for y'all. We do this for y'all. 4 more, baby. 4 more.
And the hero of the night, George Springer, who might have hit the biggest home run since Joe Carter's walk-off in 1993, he seemed overwhelmed in the moment.
I'm just so happy for everybody here, our fans, our city, our country. This is for them.
Aside from all the members of the Toronto Blue Jays, I think the happiest guy in Toronto may have been the fan who caught the ball off the Springer home run while wearing a George Springer jersey. His name is Michael Angeletti.
Feel blessed to be a part of Canadian sports history. I'm a Toronto sport fanatic. I love all our teams, especially the Blue Jays. Wishing them the best in the Fall Classic. Georgie boy, I'm wearing your jersey. Just so you know.
So for the Toronto Blue Jays, it's on to the World Series. For the first time in 32 years, they will face the mighty Los Angeles Dodgers, who have the highest payroll in Major League Baseball, about $500 million, and they have the best player in baseball, Shohei Ohtani. Toronto, though, has home field advantage. Bo Bichette will be back in the lineup for the Jays. Game 1, Friday night, 8 o'clock Eastern on Sportsnet and all across the Jays radio network, including the radio station you're listening to right now. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
Critical thinking is not dead.
Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Returns on News Radio.
And he's with us every week with a hot take on the big issues. Professor Ian Lee is back from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. How are you today?
Doing very well, thanks, Rob.
I understand you were appearing before a Senate committee today. What was that all about?
The Senate Finance Committee about they're looking out at the not just the budget, but the sort of the future directions of Canada. So I was doing big picture and dealing with the issues that you and I are going to talk about very shortly. Where should Canada go now, given the Trump administration and the tariffs and the statements he's made and so forth. And so that's what I presented. And I put forward a clear point of view, and they found it very interesting. I thought there'd be a lot more pushback or disagreement, and now they didn't say, "Oh, yes, we agree with you completely," but they said this is a very interesting and important contribution. Yes, I know they're all politicians or former politicians, but the questions were very sincere, and they were exploring it. Okay, yeah, what does this mean? Where are we going to go? That sort of thing, because basically I argued, I'm not stealing my own punchline or anything, but I argued that assuming that what Trump and the Commerce Secretary said is accurate, that they're not going to allow cars to enter from Canada without tariffs in future. They're not going to go tariff-free into the States. Well, then I argue that this is going to be the end of automotive manufacturing in Canada. And because we cannot, we're not economic if we have tariffs on there, which will make the cars economic.
Okay. By the way, the auto sector got some more bad news today. General Motors makes an electric vehicle delivery van called the Bright Drop, and it hasn't been selling. So they're halting production altogether of that. They only make it in one factory, and that's at the GM plant called the Cami plant in Ingersoll, Ontario. The 1,000 workers work there, although the plant's been idle for several months, and they don't know
Yes.
what they're going to make there now. So that's more bad news. And of course, Stellantis last week said it's going to move vehicle production out of Brampton to Illinois. So the Carney government's response has been, we're going to fight for the auto workers and we're going to sue Stellantis. I mean, what do you think about what you're hearing from the government, and what's the future of the Canadian auto sector? Because you don't sound as though manufacturing is going to be part of it.
Well, I don't see how it can. And I know there's all kinds of people are going to disagree with me, hey, we're going to fight for it, just like Carney's saying. But, as you know, I believe in data and actual reality. So I looked at the industry. We export 80% of our cars, okay? 80% of the total cars made in Canada are exported. What does that mean? It means we're completely dependent on the U.S. market. And we've just been told that we're not going to have that market anymore. Okay, so what does that mean? And some people say, and there are serious people saying, well, we'll just have our own made in Canada car. And they just don't realize, because they have not studied the numbers at all. They don't realize that this industry is so enormously capital intensive and R&D intensive. They're not the same thing. CapEx, capital expenditures, is the cost of building a factory. It's $5 billion to build one new car factory. Separate and apart from CapEx of building the factory where you build the cars, you have to have R&D every year to constantly be generating changes and innovations to the technology. And I did research on this. The European Association of Auto Manufacturers last year did a very, very large major study, and they estimated last year that the total annual R&D just for the car industry in the world was 150 billion euros, which is 200 billion Canadian dollars. Now, there's 10 very large, super large car companies in the world, Volkswagen, Toyota, and so forth. So just do the arithmetic, everybody. If there's 10 companies in the world and there's 200 billion Canadian dollars annual R&D, that means each company is spending 20 billion a year in R&D. That's just the R&D. That's not the factory and building the cars and hiring the workers. So the overhead costs of a car company today, a manufacturing company, is staggering. It's in the billions and billions. So what? Well, what it means is you need very large production runs. And I don't mean 5,000 cars. I don't mean 10,000 cars. You got to produce hundreds and hundreds of thousands of cars. But our market isn't big enough. Canadians don't buy that volume of cars because we're too small.
But we're making 1.5 million vehicles a year, though. We are making 1.5 million.
But 80% of them are exported to the States. And Trump just said, I'm going to put a tariff on everyone, which means you can't export them because they will lose money on every vehicle. He's setting the tariffs high enough that it will not be possible economically. People say we can just export it. Well, what are we going to do? Absorb the tariff, and so every car company is going to lose money on every car they've exported? That doesn't make any sense at all, because companies are not in business to lose money. They're pricing the tariffs, setting the tariffs at such a level we can't export.
Okay.
So it just means that we will not be in the car manufacturing business anymore.
We're not going to be in the car manufacturing business. Okay, well, then what business should we be in? I want to ask you that when we come back.
Exactly. Yeah, okay.
Okay. Professor Ian Lee is with us, Sprott School of Business, Carleton University. This is Now You Know on News Radio.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
Back with more with Professor Ian Lee from the Sprott School of Business at Carleton University. Professor Lee doesn't see much of a future for Canadian auto manufacturing. So if we're not going to be in that business, then what business should we be in?
Well, first and foremost, let's put some hard facts again on the table. We've been spun this story for 50, 60, 70 years by the original elites that, manufacturing is extremely important. It's the center of our economy. And this has always been bogus, empirically, statistically bogus. Let me explain. In 1970, the high water mark for manufacturing in Canada, all manufacturing, not just autos, all manufacturing of any kind, was 30% of GDP, 1/3. Today, It's down to 10%. That's not the auto industry. That's the totality of all manufacturing, including food processing and fish processing and anything that processes things that aren't retailers or resource extractors, okay? Down to 10%.
Okay.
The auto industry, by the way, is down to 2% of GDP. So much for the idea it's the center of the Canadian economy, okay? So that's really important to understand that. Over 80% of Canada is in services. And then before anybody sends me an email saying we can't all work in McDonald's, listen, anybody who works in front of a computer all day long in a high-rise building, you're in services. Rob, you're in services in broadcasting. I'm in services in education. So is healthcare, pensions, banking. Anybody who works in an office, you're services. You're not growing potatoes, you're not in agriculture, and you're not making tractors or cars. Okay, so first and foremost, services overwhelmingly employs the vast majority of us, all of us. Number two industry is resources sector, and I don't just only mean oil and gas. Potash, nuclear, electricity, seafood from the Maritimes, agriculture from the prairies, nuclear fuel. So this is what the world wants from us, critical minerals. And so I see us pivoting like Australia did when it exited auto manufacturing in 2017. All kinds of people said, doom, gloom, the end is nigh for Australia. Australia's economy took off. Their GDP per person went above Canada today after they pivoted to their mostly services like Canada, but their second most important sector is resources and mining. And so what I'm suggesting is that we should be, look what, people don't realize, they don't think, because it's been so demonized by the environmental movement. We think resources, we think dirty and low tech. It's very advanced technology in resource extraction. They have highly educated engineers. It also includes, let's not forget, electricity. Robert Bourassa developed James Bay, and it exports billions of dollars every year of electricity to the United States. That's part of the resource sector. These small nuclear reactors that they're maybe building in New Brunswick and in Ontario, that's part of the resource sector because it uses nuclear fuel. So it isn't just only oil and gas. It's lithium. You need this for the green economy. It's copper, which you need for the green economy. Because we have the second largest landmass, we have enormous amounts of minerals of every imaginable kind in Canada. We have timber. We have trees galore. And so we're sitting on literally trillions and trillions of dollars of resources across multiple industries within the resource sector. And so that's what we should be developing. And the whole world wants our resources. As the Chancellor of Germany said a couple of years ago, he said, we don't want your cars. We want your resources. So the world wants our resources. They do not want our manufactured goods. And so we should take that message. And by the way, for those who say, well, if we don't have the money to build cars, how are we going to build all these mines? The foreign companies around the world are sitting on enormous amounts of money. They will bring the foreign capital to Canada to develop those mines, whether it's nickel, cadmium, copper, lithium, etc. And so we are sitting on so much wealth in this country, it's unbelievable.
Okay, all right.
That's where we got to go. That's where we got to go.
Glad we could fit you in right after you talked to the senators today. Nice to hear from you today. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thanks very much, Rob. Bye.
Yeah, Professor Ian Lee, always with an opinion, of course, on some of the big issues of the day. We'll be right back. We'll talk some politics. A lot happening in the political world today that we need to tell you about. That's coming up next on News Radio.
Now you know with Rob Snow continues on News Radio.
With our Tuesday Newsday political panel, back with us today, Matthew Dube, Vice President, Proof Strategies, former NDP MP. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks, Rob. How are you doing?
I'm underslept and overcaffeinated because I was up past my bedtime watching baseball.
Sounds like a great reason.
Yeah. It was worth it. Devin McCarthy's back here, partner, Sussex Strategy Group. How are you, Devin?
I'm fine, Rob. Exciting game last night for sure.
Yeah, it was a good one. Very, very exciting. More to say about that later. Let's talk some politics. Let's talk about Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre. He appears now to be doing some damage control after his appearance on a popular political webcast. He was asked, if you were the prime minister, how would you handle political scandals, say, compared to how they were handled during the Trudeau era. And he said, well, many of the scandals of the Trudeau era, quote, should have involved jail time. He said, quote, Trudeau broke the criminal code when he took a free vacation from someone with whom he had government business, talking about the Agacon fiasco. He went on to accuse the RCMP of, quote, covering up for him, and said the leadership of the RCMP is frankly just despicable when it comes to enforcing the laws against the Liberal government, end quote. So then there was backlash to that, and he issued a statement saying, my comments were directed to the former RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki, who has a lengthy track record of publicly documented scandals, deception, and political interference to the benefit of the Liberal government. Devin, what do you make of first of all, the original remarks and now this attempt at backtracking?
I mean, I certainly get the political appeal. Poilievre was channeling, I think, frustration about Trudeau era ethics issues that served him well and played well for a number of years, while also invoking the long-standing conservative concern here in Ottawa that the federal bureaucracy leans liberal. But I think he did take it too far, calling for jail time, claiming an RCMP cover-up, went beyond the sort of typical attack lines. And I think the effort to clarify shows recognition that the initial attempt was clumsy, at least, or just overreaching in general. To me, I mean, the bigger question is, was it strategic? There is the leadership review coming up in January, so part of this is energizing the grassroots, playing to the base ahead of that. But I think Mr. Poilievre has to keep in mind that comments that thrill parts of the base don't necessarily play well with the swing voters he's trying to attract, or even with some segments of the conservative base who value strong support for law enforcement. So, I think he faces that continuous balancing act, maintaining a combative populist edge as an opposition leader while projecting, the credibility of a national leader. I just think there are better targets like the upcoming budget.
Sure. Matthew, what do you think about first of all, the original remarks and now the follow-up statement? What I really meant was da-da-da-da.
Yeah, it's hard to know where to start with this. I mean, look, unlike other public servants, like the commissioner of the RCMP, like any member of the RCMP, is a rank and file member of the police force. Like, these are law enforcement officers that Conservatives purport to have the utmost respect for. They want legislation improved to help them better do their jobs. So it's really kind of counter to that piece of narrative, for sure. I also think that, I remember when I first got elected, Jack Layton saying, you don't want to look in the rearview mirror in politics. And I mean, we're not just looking in the rearview mirror to what's immediately behind us. Like, we're going back 6 years in the past, relitigating, some of the scandals that Justin Trudeau had, and quite frankly, misrepresenting, notwithstanding, what the former prime minister was culpable of, misrepresenting even what the consequences are, and using. And look, Rob, don't get me wrong. I loathe the comparisons of Pierre Poilievre to Donald Trump, but in this instance, it sounds very Trumpian, I think, to Joe Public. When you're talking about people deserving jail time and things like that, and ultimately, at the end of the day, it just takes them away from their narrative. Like Devin just mentioned, the budget. I mean, one of the things that, we know the top priority for Canadians is the cost of living crisis. There's new inflation numbers that are out today, but rather than talking about what the government should be doing, the Conservatives are playing defense on something that is just really a major own goal as far as I'm concerned.
But he was asked about it. What would you do different if you were the prime minister about scandals? So he's asked pretty much straight up. So what do you just pivot and not answer the question, or what do you say in a
that's totally fair, Rob. And I think there's a way to say it, right? To express frustration, to say that, it's unfortunate that the prime minister, the former prime minister wasn't, his feet weren't held to the fire in an adequate way. But at the end of the day, I'm looking forward. I've got Canadians' interests in mind. All that sounds like spin, sure, but there's plenty of ways an agile politician like Pierre Poilievre can answer that question adequately without throwing a load of fuel on a very small fire that's now kind of been blazing for them for a few days.
Well, yeah, and it is a missed opportunity where you could have. It's not like things are going swimmingly for the government right now. There's still no deal with Trump, although there are reports something might be announced later in the month. An inflation report came out today that surprised some people. You have all kinds of issues in the auto sector with Stellantis, and now news about the Cami auto plant not looking good in Ingersoll, Ontario. I mean, it's not as though Devin, there's this lack of material to work with if you're Pierre Poilievre, right?
I think that's right. There are headwinds that this government is facing, and he has been in politics for his whole career. As was noted, he is agile. And when he's focused and on message, he can be very astute at litigating the issues of the day, as he did through the latter parts of the Trudeau government. So I think pivoting his messaging back to that is key.
Yeah, I think, and I'll just get the last word on this one before we move on to other things. I would have said something like, well, we never got to the end of the story of SNC-Lavalin because the government wouldn't release documents to the RCMP, just as it wouldn't release, even after a vote in the House of Commons by all the opposition parties to release everything to do with the so-called green slush fund. In total defiance of the will of the House of Commons, they refused to release those documents. This is, old hat for the Liberal Party. This is how they operate. You could have said something like that, I suppose. I want to talk about the federal budget. Are we going to be in an election? Like in a month from now, could there be an election over this budget? There's some speculation about that. We'll talk about that when we come back. This is News Radio.
There is no question Rob won't get answered.
Now You Know with Rob Snow continues
on News Radio.
Tuesday, Newsday, political panel. Devin McCarthy here from Sussex Strategy Group. Matthew Dube from Proof Strategies. So let's talk about the newest news first when it comes to the budget. The budget is 2 weeks from today, the federal budget. Steve McKinnon is the House leader. He has to kind of try and shepherd this through the House of Commons. And he told the press gallery today that he's worried about the chances that the budget will pass. Quote, we're 2 weeks from the budget. I think what I'm seeing in Parliament worries me. We have a minority government, but we believe we have a mandate. And when I see opposition parties ruling out the possibility of voting for the budget, that's starting to worry me. If an election is necessary, we would obviously reluctantly, because we don't think Canadians want an election, but an election there will be. And it's the opposition parties who have that decision on their hands. What do you think the chances are we'll be back into an election mere weeks from now? What do you think, Matthew?
Personally, I hope not. My gosh, it's like we need a bit of a break from that aspect of the news cycle. But look, I mean, this is all posturing, right? I think Mr. McKinnon's correct. Canadians don't want an election. I think there's still, obviously, again, I said this a moment ago, but the concerns of cost of living, there's still concerns about trade tensions, and, just such a dour and dire news cycle that I think Canadians want Parliament to get to work. So I think this is just a way to put pressure on opposition parties. And so far as I know, and I could be mistaken, but the only party that's unequivocally said they won't support the budget, and even that could change, is the Bloc Québécois. So I don't think the NDP or the Conservatives have entirely ruled it out. So I suspect life will find a way as it goes. In this instance, I have a hard time imagining that, but stranger things have happened, I suppose.
Okay. Devin, what do you think?
I would agree with that. I don't see sort of a Joe Clark 1979 surprise defeat in the offing here. I think the NDP and the Liberals are aligned on enough priorities. Both know an election would be risky. Maybe the NDP just abstains from voting for the budget motion and it passes that way without sort of explicit support from an opposition party. But I do think, Steve McKinnon here is playing defense, making sure that one doesn't just sort of slip past the goalie inadvertently here. And in terms of if the government did fall, Prime Minister Carney might not be viewing that as a disaster if it was engineered.
That's the other scenario. What if they want the budget to fail? And they go back to the polls in 30 days. And look, came up just shy last time. Maybe we'll get a majority. We won't have to deal with any of these opposition parties. We'll get our majority. I mean, how likely is that? Devin?
Yeah, the last few times that a minority government went to the polls, so the Liberals in both cases, and were seen as having triggered that election, they got punished by the electorate right away. They were able to sort of bring it back and secure their minority on election day, but they were punished early in the campaign for causing the election.
Right.
Prime Minister Carney might not view it as a disaster out of the gate if he could engineer it in such a way that it was the opposition parties causing the election. He might think, well, now it'll fall in our favor. But I mean, the polls have been narrowing over the past several months. The final week of the campaign, of the election campaign in April, saw the polls tightening, and the Liberals, lost the majority down the stretch there. So it would be a huge gamble for the Prime Minister.
And I would add the polls have tightened. The polls have tightened since the last election as well.
Absolutely,
it's closer than it used to be. But what about this? The Liberals don't want the budget to pass. They'd rather fight another election, even if it is 6 months later. They'll blame it on the opposition playing games, and they'll try and get a majority. What would you think of that scenario, Matthew?
Well, I think that's partly, in addition to putting pressure on the opposition parties, I think that's why the House Leader is positioning it this way, right? To make it so, to avoid that punishment on the off chance that it doesn't work out. And, I certainly hear your point about the polls tightening. I think the one thing Liberals might look to is I do think that Pierre Poilievre remains somewhat unpopular compared to the Prime Minister. That being said, since the last election, I think the trade tensions, except for a certain segment of the electorate, the older voters who, frankly, as we know, are more likely to vote. But other than them, most people have kind of pivoted back to more domestic issues. I'm not entirely convinced that, especially, we'll see what comes out in this budget, but I'm not entirely convinced that what the Liberals have to offer is compelling enough on that front just yet. So I'm not sure they're keen on it, but I think they're laying the groundwork for all possibilities. And regardless of what happens, just kind of putting the ball in the opposition's court. It's one of the perks of being a minority. Sure, you have to do a lot of work negotiating, but you can also put a lot of pressure on the opposition parties. And I think that's what they're doing. And if it's an election, they can blame the opposition. And when the budget passes, someone else can, take the heat if it's a bit unpopular. So we'll see. We'll see where things go.
When we come back to our Tuesday Newsday political panel, we'll talk about the rarest of birds in Canadian politics, a provincial Liberal government. This is News Radio.
You have questions.
Now You Know with Rob Snow has the answers.
On News Radio.
Back with Devin McCarthy, Sussex Strategy Group, Matthew Dube, Proof Strategies. There is all but one provincial Liberal government. It's in New Brunswick, Premier Susan Holt. We have two NDP governments, one in Manitoba, one in BC. Quebec has the CAQ for now, for another year or so. And they're going to boot those guys out. All the other provincial governments are various shades of blue. You have Conservatives with a hard edge in Alberta, and in Atlantic Canada, Progressive Conservatives almost with a kind of a shade of red almost. But look, nationally, the Liberal brand is still very strong, obviously. It doesn't seem to be the case when it comes to provincial politics. Why do you think that is, Devin?
I mean, some provinces have swung to the right, as you noted, a couple to the left. I'm not sure that there is a sort of new national ideology emerging. I don't think it's necessarily an American style hollowing out of the political middle that's sending, some right, some left. I think it has more to do with voter frustration, with affordability, with government performance. I mean, we're seeing change elections globally coming out of the past few years, particularly out of COVID. And I think Liberal governments across the country that were governing during those years, in several cases, have borne the brunt of that. Also, I mean, you noted the Liberal brand in Ottawa. I mean, they have been in power federally for 10 years plus 2 days. 2015 election was October 19th. So they just passed the 10-year mark. And that always creates some political headwinds for provincial cousins when you have that anchored.
Okay. What do you think is happening with the lack of Liberal success at the provincial level, Matthew?
Well, I mean, the low-hanging fruit cheap shot I could take at my own party is that as a New Democrat, I can certainly tell you that provincial and federal fortunes are not always linked. We've obviously seen the Democrats be a lot more successful in some provinces than we have recently federally. So, I don't always know if there's a direct connection. There's obviously different regional dynamics that are at play. I would agree with a lot of what Devin said, and I think ultimately there's just a lot of pressure on incumbents right now for all the things that we talk about so often, right? The cost of living. I think, if you look at François Legault, he's just in Quebec. He managed the province through COVID. There's, no matter what people feel about it at the time, that's going to leave a mark. You spend a lot of political capital on a situation like that. And then you're just kind of, things catch up with you, right? I mean, 10 years in most places in the country, including federally, kind of tends to be the ballpark best before date. And I think a lot of governments are there. And then where they aren't, like where, Doug Ford seems like continue to be Teflon. I think there's also weaker opposition to blame, right? You look at Ontario, the opposition's fairly weak. In BC, the Conservatives have a lot of infighting. So David Eby can hang on to that razor-thin edge in the House. So, there's different dynamics everywhere, but undoubtedly it just makes it harder for the federal government, right? But luckily, Mark Carney seems to do okay getting along with different colored premiers on the blue team in particular. So that helps for sure.
Okay, interesting. Thank you so much, everyone. Great to hear from both of you today.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, bye-bye. Matthew Dube from Proof Strategies, former New Democrat MP. Sussex Strategy Group, Devin McCarthy. He's a partner there. Be right back with Talkback today, coming up on News Radio.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
Welcome to Talkback. It's 2 hours of debate and discussion on the big issues of the day. I have to tell you, I was really struggling to make a decision about what to ask you today. Because we usually talk about hard news issues on this show. That's my kind of thing, the news, being interested in the news. We know you're interested in the news as well. We talk a lot of politics during Talkback, lots and lots of politics. But honest to goodness, today, what's the biggest news story in the country today? What is the biggest news story in the country today? It's the Toronto Blue Jays. It's the Toronto Blue Jays going to the World Series for the first time in 32 years. That is the biggest news story in the country. And it's not even close. It's the Toronto Blue Jays on the front page of all the big news websites. It's the George Springer home run that's all over social media today and being replayed on all the news channels. And I'm telling you, when the television ratings come out for that baseball game last night, they're going to be huge. They are going to be huge. Nothing on Canadian television is going to come close to the ratings of that Game 7 classic last night. I wouldn't be surprised if it's something like 4 million, 5 million Canadians who tuned into that game last night. Blue Jays and Mariners. And I mean, think about it. 32 years. 32 years. That's a long time. I mean, that's a generation. For the first time in a generation, really, the Blue Jays are going to the World Series. I mean, most people born in the 1990s, they don't even remember the last time the Blue Jays were in the World Series. So I suppose we could talk about politics if you want. We could talk about Pierre Poilievre and the comments he made about Justin Trudeau and the RCMP. I think the Blue Jays is a bigger story than that. We could talk about the potential for another election 6 months after the last election, but I think the Blue Jays is a bigger story than that. We could talk about the federal budget 2 weeks from today, massive budget deficit, maybe some cuts to the federal government's payroll, but isn't the Jays a bigger story than that? The Auditor General has a bunch of new reports out today about all the ways the federal government is wasting our money, but that's like an evergreen story. The Blue Jays going to the World Series is like a once in a generation story. We could talk about Trump. I mean, there's always something to talk about with Trump. He's tearing down a part of the White House to build the Trump ballroom, but honestly, I think more Canadians care about the Toronto Blue Jays today than whatever Donald Trump is doing. Calgary's going to have a new mayor. A woman stole a fire truck in Halifax. The Kitchener police were all over the place answering calls about fireworks for Diwali holiday. I mean, all of these things are in the news, but none of them quite measure up, I think, to the level of interest in this country in this baseball team. The 2025 Toronto Blue Jays going to the World Series for the first time since 1993. I just don't usually talk for hours on end on the radio about sports because I'm not a sports broadcaster. I'm just a sports fan. I played a lot of sports as a younger man, but I'm no expert in sports the way the sports talk radio guys are. I'm just a fan who has teams that he cheers for, and I'm cheering for this team, the Toronto Blue Jays. So with the Jays being such a big news story, I mean the biggest news story in the country, we want to talk about sports today. Not just about the Jays, but about the highs and lows of being a sports fan. Okay, because yesterday it's like this roller coaster of emotions. Oh my gosh, can the Jays do this? Are the bats going to come alive? Can the bullpen hang on? All of these things. We're just going to toss some questions out there. We really hope you'll pick up the phone and join the conversation, start the conversation. I mean, just consider them conversation starters and we'll see how things go. Because I'm going to tell you, I'll never forget where I was watching that game last night. I'll remember that for years. Not that it was anything exciting. I was just on the couch with my dog, and then George Springer hits a home run, and I'm jumping up and down in the living room like a lunatic. Maybe you were too. What is a sports moment for you? A sports moment for you that is just etched in your memory forever. What is a moment in time in your life, a sports moment in time? You remember exactly where you were when it happened. What is that moment for you? You know, that kind of guy, remember when? You know, what is that moment for you? Maybe for some of you it'll be last night. Maybe for others it will be 1993 when Joe Carter hit that home run. Maybe it's Henderson scores for Canada or Sidney Crosby scores the golden goal. Maybe it's when your team won the Stanley Cup or won a Super Bowl or something else entirely. Maybe it's when your team lost. Okay. Because there's the thrill of victory, but there's also the agony of defeat. What's a moment like that for you? You know, I remember when. 1-833-668-2577. 1-833-668-2577. I'd love to hear your memories just about being a sports fan. Because of what happened last night, I mean, George Springer is going to be a sports hero for a whole generation of Jays fans. They're going to be talking about that for years, if not decades to come. It was all over social media. George Springer's never going to have to buy a beer in Canada again. Children are going to grow up worshiping George Springer. He's going to be a sports hero. Do you have a sports hero? I've had some sports heroes in my life. You got a sports hero? And what do you think about the Blue Jays being called Canada's team? Canada's team. How do you feel about cheering for a team from Toronto? Being a sports fan, that's our topic of the day. Your sports memories, sports heroes, sports teams, cheering for Canada's team, the serious stuff, the politics, the troubles of the world. They'll all still be here tomorrow. And sports is always such a lot of fun and a great escape. And yesterday was such an epic moment, not just in Jays history, but in Canadian sports history. We'd love to kick it around for a while with you. 1-833-668-2577. If you've never called before, just mention that. We'll make you a priority today on Talkback. I'm Rob Snow. This is Now You Know. It's News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
And we're not talking about politics or other hard news today. We're talking about sports. Because the Blue Jays are going to the World Series. That's the biggest news story in Canada. But we're asking a more general question. A sports moment for you that is etched in your memory forever. That sports moment in time that you'll remember for the rest of your life. What is that I remember when moment? You have a sports hero? How do you feel about cheering for a team from Toronto? The Jays calling itself Canada's team. We could talk about all of this. 1-833-668-2577. To Dartmouth. Up first is Rick is in Dartmouth. Hi, Rick.
Hi, Rob. Look, I have a sort of a dual personality. I'm, of course, a sports fan, but I played at pretty high level. Was a three-sport guy in my, teens and early 20s. Had a pro hockey tryout in Saginaw, Michigan, and to start the ball rolling, that's where I was when Paul Henderson scored the magic goal there against the Soviets.
Yeah, you told me that before, yeah.
I know, and there was no coverage of it whatsoever. So anyway, that was number one. Number two, I played baseball, and the guy that coached me, he got a look from a couple of teams, but he ended up being a scout for the Montreal Expos. So I was coached by a pretty good guy there, and I still ended up playing, slow pitch until I couldn't run anymore. So anyway, back to last night.
Yeah. Late night for you guys in Halifax. Well, like that. What time did that end in Halifax? It must have been after midnight.
Oh, it doesn't even matter. It was. Look, we know why the game is later, because the games in Seattle were earlier. For them, because we're playing time zone. Okay, that's why, and I give them, full credit for starting the game later in Toronto, so it wouldn't be on too early in the afternoon there. But anyway, I don't watch the games. I listen to them on News 95.7 here, and basically the announcers are so good. Ben Shulman and Chris LaRue, they're pretty good, and their descriptions, I basically get to see them later on the highlights from YouTube. Okay, so I like the fact that on the radio I can do other things while I'm listening to the game. But I had kind of written, I hate to say it, although I've listened to and eventually watched almost all of the games this year. I had a lot invested in the season. And when it started out with, 13-1 loss against Baltimore, the first game of the year, I went, oh dear, well, it was, just like last year. But anyway, they came around. It was great. And the Springer Dinger, as it was bound to be called, was I don't know, like a surprise, just because it was a home run that was needed. A double would have cleared the bases, but George wouldn't have scored. Then we'd be tied, and then we might go into extra innings. Anyway.
Oh yeah.
So it was terribly, terribly exciting for when they threw in Gosman and Chris Bassett as relievers. That's one of the things about this deep in the playoffs that you get to see other pitchers do. Just the last thing, the first baseball memory I had was Sandy Koufax of the Los Angeles Dodgers throwing a no-hitter against whoever it was. I can't remember that. But anyway,
all right.
So
A while ago, but way before my time.
today.
All right, Rick. Yep. Thank you. On sports, Marianne is up next in Calgary. Hi, Marianne.
Good morning. Thank you for taking my call.
Yeah, my call, my pleasure, Marianne. Thank you.
I
Go ahead.
wanted to first of all say kudos to the Flames last night. They actually paused the Flames-Jets game. We were at the game. They paused it in the Saddle Dome to show us Springer's home run and the final out on the Jumbotron, and that was much appreciated because the crowd was really into that last night.
Cool. That's very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
But my best sports memory revolves around the Flames in the 2004 run to the Cup, because my husband and I had gone on a trip to French Polynesia while they were playing Detroit, and we couldn't get updates because that was before widespread cell phone coverage and stuff. So we managed to find an internet cafe on the island of Moorea the morning after the Detroit-Calgary game, and it cost us 12 or 13 euros for 15 minutes of dial-up to try and figure out what had happened. And when we found out that Marty had scored and we had beat Detroit, we jumped up and down and hugged each other and yelled, and all these poor Polynesian people are staring at these two crazy white English people. And then we're trying to explain ice hockey in really poor French. But that was some morning. I think we celebrated with some ridiculously expensive beer in there. And then, of course, we're excited to get back home to see how the Flames carried on from there.
What a great story. That's such a great story. That's like 20 years ago, more than 20 years ago. Isn't that something? You still remember it probably to this day, right? It's just something that you'll never, ever forget. You'll never forget that, right?
It's emblazoned in my memory.
Yeah. Amazing. I love a story like that. Thank you so much, Marianne. So good to hear from you today. Be right back on Talkback. 1-833-668-2577. Sports memories, sports heroes. Cheering for Canada's team, the Toronto Blue Jays, on Talkback News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
The day after the big Blue Jays win on their way to the World Series, that's the biggest news story in Canada. We're talking about sports today, or generally speaking, if you have a sports moment that's, that moment in time where you're just going to remember that moment in time for the rest of your life. What is that? I remember when moment. Do you have a sports hero, a team you cheer for? How did that happen? How did it happen that you cheer for that particular team? And how do you feel about cheering for a team from Toronto? 1-833-668-2577. Emerson up next. Hi, Emerson.
Hi. Just wanted to let you know I was coming back on WestJet from Vancouver to Calgary, and the flight deck comes on and says, "Ladies and gentlemen, I have some really good news. No, we're not arriving early, that the Blue Jays are in the World Series." And everybody erupted, everyone high-five, and there was tears. The lady beside me started crying. She goes, "Oh, I'm always afraid to watch a series with Toronto because I think they're going to lose." And I was like, oh, my God, I've been going through this. I said I was 6 years old the last time the Leafs won the Stanley Cup. I'm now 64. I said, okay, 32 years ago, I remember Joe Carter hitting that walk-off home run, but there was nothing like the excitement on the aircraft. And when everybody was leaving, we arrived in Calgary, and everyone's high-fiving the flight attendant. It just goes to show you something so positive, how it energizes. You just forget about all your problems for the moment, And just to be able to see total strangers loving each other. And then when I saw the highlights, when I got home and I saw all the players crying, Vladdy crying and the coach crying. And it was like, oh, my God, this is unbelievable, They're just so close. This team is so close. And I'm just going to stand by them right to the end. No matter what happens, just the excitement that they've brought, Rob. I just want to say, and even Dan Shulman and Buck Martinez, And these guys are just cut out for what they do. I mean, they just live this
great.
for the moment, you know.
Oh yeah,
they're amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you for
Dan
allowing me to
Shulman.
share my moment on WestJet last night. It was amazing. Thank you so much.
That's funny. That's just such a good story. Okay. Thank you, Emerson. To Linda's up next. Hi, Linda. You're up next,
Hello?
Linda. Hi there. Yeah. Hi, Linda.
Hi.
You're on the air. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I have a Blue Jays moment when they won the World Series.
In 1993? Yeah. In 1993? Yeah.
Yes, the era of the VCR. We were watching the game, and then we had to go down to a function in town, and so we threw the VCR tape in and turned it on, and then we went to the downtown, and then they were talking. Some people, because you'd get just somebody would phone over and say, "Well, this is what's happening," whatever. And then we're waiting and waiting, and we knew that was going to happen. So then when it was done, we hurried up and ran home. The VCR tape had kicked out, and so then we thought, okay, we can just rewind and watch.
Yeah.
But it had kicked out before the final home run.
Oh, no. No.
Yeah, and so then we had to wait for the news to see it. But I said, that's why I will always remember it, because they had won, and we didn't get that last final
You didn't get
shot.
Joe Carter. Touch them all, Joe.
No.
Touch them all, Joe.
And
Okay. That's funny.
And then it's like,
Darn
okay.
VCRs, always blinking 12 too. Okay. All right. Thank you, Linda. All right. I'm enjoying it so far. Thank you. We'll be right back with more of your calls and more of your sports memories.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Here comes the 3-2. He got him! For the first time in 32 years, the Toronto Blue Jays are going to the World Series. Exactly the part of the lineup you want up in a situation like this. And a swing and a fly ball to left field. Back goes Arozarena. She's gone!
A lot of people will never forget that moment. George Springer hitting a home run in the bottom of the seventh inning in the American League Championship Series and putting the Blue Jays over the top and just putting them in the World Series for the first time in 32 years. Just an amazing moment. What is a sports moment? That's what we're asking today that you will remember for the rest of your life. I mean, where does that one rank? What is that I remember when moment? Do you have a sports hero? 1-833-668-2577. And we're talking sports today on Talkback. Vicky is in Halifax. Hi, Vicky. Hi, Vicky.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
Well, I'm underslept and overcaffeinated. Vicky, how are you?
The way you should be after last night. I
Very
will
exciting.
never forget. I'll be honest, I'll never forget Saturday, October 24th, 1992.
Okay.
It was magical. I'll tell you, I was in a ball gown, a taffeta ball gown. I was on a 5-star award trip back then. If you worked at the Sheraton in Halifax, which is now the Marriott, on the waterfront by the casino, you couldn't stay at that hotel if you worked there unless you won the 5-star award, which my friend did. And I was invited, which means you're wined and dined, you stay overnight, you have brunch in the morning at the Grand Banker, the whole works. And we went to a bar. I was overdressed, and it was celebrating the Blue Jays because I'll tell you, the time went back in that bar. It was open an extra hour. It was magical because the Blue Jays not only won against the Braves. Nobody remembers. No one's talking about Dave Winfield. Dave Winfield, he got to second base, but he batted in 2 runs for the Blue Jays to take the World Series 4-2.
Okay. And that's just because of the scenario. You're there basically what, in a ball gown in this bar?
I'm in a ball gown in a bar that's staying open an extra hour, and the Blue Jays took it home. It was magical. Like, it was just electrifying, I'll tell you, that night. That I'll never forget it ever in my whole life.
Yeah. Where does the events of last night, I mean, where does that rank for you?
Nothing
is
will
it right
ever.
up there? Nothing will compare
It is right
to
up.
that?
It is right up there because I also I had my Mariners jersey on with the Blue Jays hat because I had also been a Mariners fan and went to
Really?
Seattle and bought the Mariners jersey. So just to, confuse people, I had the Mariners jersey on, but I had the Blue Jays hat on. So I had to have a plan B as well, right?
Okay.
But I was
Okay.
really
So
wanting the Jays to win, clearly, but
Okay. So you're a happy camper today then.
I'm extremely happy, but nothing can replace that night where we
That
had an
night in
extra hour to
1992.
celebrate, right?
Yeah,
And the
amazing.
time went back, and and I look back and I'm like, well, now the time doesn't go back until usually the end of October, but I'm not sure
Okay.
what the change was. But back then, it was Saturday night, and it was the time we had an extra hour to celebrate. I mean, we could have used that today, right, Rob?
I could use it today. Yeah, I sure could.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. Or
But
maybe
well
2
worth it.
hours. Or,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well
that
worth it
memory
though.
it was amazing. And I never thought I'd see it again recently, but we did it. Hopefully, to go and we're hoping for a close on this one.
Yeah. Me too. It's going to be tough. That's a very good team that they're up against, and not too many people are giving the Blue Jays much of a chance against the Dodgers. But they've got to play the games. They'll play the games, and we'll see what happens. Thank you, Vicky. Good to hear from you today. Sharu is up next in Calgary today. Sharu.
Hello. Thanks for having me on
Hi
your
there.
show. First time
Well,
caller.
my pleasure. Appreciate that.
Long
Thank
time
you.
listener.
Very good.
Where do I start? Yes, Blue Jays last night. What? Oh my God, that was outstanding. I jumped off my couch. I could feel the energy throughout the entire country. Everybody was going mad. Yes, George Springer brought that baby home, and it was just to everyone's delight. Absolutely loved it. Loved the fact we're in the World Series. So exciting. I'm actually not a huge baseball fan. My passion has been NFL and NHL. So I'm a huge Flames fan. Love the Red Mile. Love the 2004, the whole thing. It was just a great energy vibe in Calgary, and you could feel it. You saw every car had a flag. I love sports, so I love that energy. I love that enthusiasm. That was wonderful. But my best memory ever, which will never probably ever be replaced, is Super Bowl 51. Brady's amazing comeback in overtime. I guess it went to overtime against the Atlanta Falcons, and they were down 25 points, 28-3 in the third quarter. In 50 Super Bowls, it had never gone to overtime. So this one actually went to overtime, and they won. That was unbelievable. We were there live in person watching it. I had treated my brother to his 50th birthday present.
Oh, wow.
So
You were at the game? You were at the game?
We were at the game. I
Wow.
bought the tickets in October.
And where was the
I
game?
had no idea
Where was
at
the
the
game?
time. It was in Houston at Energy Stadium.
Okay.
So I bought the
Cool.
tickets in October. The Patriots were 7-1 at that time. There was no indication, of course, that they would actually be there in the end. And to my huge surprise and delight, they were. They beat the Steelers in the AFC Conference Championship and made it to Super Bowl 51. And there we were, attending the greatest event in sports history, and of course had our heads down, sulking for majority of the game, going, "What is going on?" And then, of course, Brady and
cue the comeback.
everybody never blinked and said, "We can do it, one drive at a time." So we actually bought tickets for the after party. So we saw Robert Kraft holding up the Super Bowl trophy. We celebrated with Pitbull at 3 a.m. Just had an absolute best sports experience ever. My brother says, I don't know what the hell to do to repay you for this for your 50th, you know? I said, look, you're 4 years older. You have 4 years to worry about that.
Very cool. Great story. Thank you for calling. Be right back on Talkback on News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Well, with the Jays off to the World Series after the big win last night, we're talking a little bit of sports today on Talkback. We don't normally do that, but we're doing it today and asking what's a sports moment that is just etched in your memory forever and ever and ever, something you'll never forget. Anand in Calgary. Hello, Anand.
Good afternoon, Rob. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you? Now, the last time you called me, you said you were just learning about baseball. You got a crash course now. How do you feel?
Yeah, the Blue Jays win was amazing. I wasn't able to watch the game yesterday fully because I was working at the elections. But hearing the score and them going to World Series was amazing to hear.
Okay. Now, do you have a sports memory that you'll never forget? Something that, is just
I do.
like etched in your memory?
It's similar to baseball. I follow a cricket team called Royal Challengers Bangalore. They're part of the Indian Premier League, and they won their finals for the first time in more than 20 years. They won it this summer in June, and I was sitting in my in my house in the main living room, and I jumped up. I cheered for them when they won it. It was like a memory that I'll cherish forever. I've been always wanting them to win a championship, and they did that during the summer. So that will be one of the memories that I'll cherish forever.
That's very interesting. So let me ask you, because it was happening so far away, so many different time zones away, did you have to get up at a strange hour of the day to watch that?
No, so it was happening. Thankfully, it was happening at Indian night time, so it was around 10:30. There was rain delay as well, so they couldn't play the match for till 10 o'clock Indian time at night. So it was in the morning, 8 a.m. in the morning for Calgary, so not too bad. But I've seen World Cup matches for India between India and Pakistan at 3 a.m. in the morning. So comparing both of that, it wasn't too bad of a wake-up time for me.
It's not too bad. Well, and thank you for your call today, because there will be some people who are they're such diehards. When teams are playing abroad, they'll get up in the middle of the night to watch it. Let's go to Grace up next. Hi, Grace.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm very good, Grace. Thank you for calling.
Good. In 1992, I was transferred with the Salvation Army to Toronto headquarters. And that's when I started to get into the baseball. So the 92 game I just watched on my TV. But the next year, I was actually in North York General with a major leg surgery. And so I watched it on the TV. And my friend, she brought me some Old Dutch chips and Diet Coke so I could celebrate watching the game. And I happened to be in a room with three real old ladies, like they were probably in their 80s. And you just had the little tiny TV with headphones. And so right at the end when Joe Carter, and he was my favorite, when he hit that home run, I yelled right out loud and actually woke one of them up. But last night, and so I've watched baseball ever since. And even if they're losing, I am still faithful, and I will watch the whole game, even if they're losing. Yeah. But last night, just before Springer's home run, I had to go to the bathroom.
My gosh.
So, but I was praying in there. I was praying, and then all of a sudden I heard the yelling, and it's gone, right? So I told my niece that. She went to her first game in July, or was it August? No, in July, I think. September, I'm sorry. And so now she's gotten into it. So her daughter told me that I needed to go back in the bathroom and pray. But they did win. They did win, and I knew
Yep.
they had it in them. I had no. I was a little bit nervous last night,
Okay.
but
Okay.
they would win. I knew they would.
You were
win. And I
confident,
knew-
though. You were confident they would
Yes.
pull it out.
Well, if they wanted it that bad, which they did, I knew
Yeah.
something would happen. But yeah, I was a little worried, but Georgie came through.
There you go.
Yeah, him.
Well,
yeah,
Grace,
him and Garip. Yeah.
thank you for having that line to the Almighty, if that's what it took for George Springer to hit that home run last night. Appreciate the call today. More of your calls ahead. A sports moment that you'll remember forever. I mean, this one was a big one. The George Springer home run, a Game 7 win to send a team to the World Series. I mean, it's something that every kid dreams about, you know, playing sports as a child. Where does that one rank for you? It's got to be up there for some people. 1-833-668-2577. This is News Radio.
Have something on your mind you want everyone to know?
Call now.
Hello.
1-833-668-2577.
It's Talkback on Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Do you have a sports moment that is just ingrained in your memory, like a moment in sports, like kind of like last night, George Springer hits the home run, you know, something that you'll remember forever? You know, I remember when. What is that moment? Mike in Kitchener up next. Hi, Mike. Very good, Mike. Thanks. Thanks.
Good.
Tell me your story, Mike.
Two memories. The first one's the easy one, which was Joe Carter's home run in '93. I don't think there's ever been a moment in at least baseball history in Toronto that's ever topped that. George was close last night, and maybe he's got one in his pocket for the next series.
Well, let's hope so.
But here's my motivational memory for everyone across Canada. 1992 in Atlanta. The color guard comes out on the field before the game, and the Canadian flag is upside down.
You know what? I was thinking about that. I was like, I remember when the Blue Jays were in the World Series, when they were playing in the United States, and they brought the color guard, brought the flag out, the Canadian flag out upside down, and I just couldn't pinpoint when that happened. And you remember when that?
In Atlanta. So my little message to my friends in America, you got 7 days to figure out how it goes because the 51st state is coming for you.
Okay, Mike. Yeah. Well said. Oh gosh, I remember what an uproar there was about that, and apologies, and it wasn't on purpose, and all kinds of drama about that. I remember that. Yeah. I remember the incident. I just couldn't pinpoint the exact time when that happened. Mike, thank you. That's such a great comment, though. I'm sure a lot of people remember that. Jim in Halifax. Hi, Jim.
Hello.
Hi, Jim. Are you there? Yeah. Hi, Jim. Good to hear from you
I'm
today.
here. I remember the Sidney Crosby goal. I was in Florida on vacation at the time. But there's something else that really bothers me in the last couple of interviews that the manager did with the young lady there. I forget her name now. Of course, I was glued to the TV last night like everybody else. But what really bothers me, I'm an old sailor, and I've heard a lot of very foul language over my career. But how come that the manager has to use F-bombs in front of this lady, in front of an audience that's got children all over the place? It really bothers me.
Yeah, you're not the first to raise that. That came up when he did the same thing when they beat the Yankees.
He did.
Yeah. And you don't approve.
And I also thought that Springer should have been the most valuable player.
Okay.
But this business, I don't know why they have to use the language. It's just beyond me.
Yeah. In case you don't know, I think we have the clip. Can you pull up that John Schneider clip, Curtis? We have the Safe for Radio version of it when he's being interviewed by Hazel May right after the game. Go ahead, Curtis, if you have that.
This is unbelievable for me. This is my 24th year with this organization, and I love it here.
Yeah, I noticed. I noticed after that Sportsnet started running a disclaimer on the broadcast.
Well, one announcer said, "Oh, he's really fired up." Well, he can be fired up all he wants, but he doesn't have to use that kind of language.
Yeah, fair enough, sir. Yeah, you're not the first to complain about that. Yeah, I think he's just a very passionate guy, obviously, and loves his team. It doesn't mean profane about it.
It's time to talk back.
On Now You Know with Rob Snow.
Call now.
And have your say.
1-833-668-2577.
And welcome to hour number 2 of Talkback. Kind of a different Talkback today. We're not talking about politics or other hard news today. We're talking about sports, generally speaking, because of the big Blue Jays win last night. The Blue Jays going to the World Series for the first time since 1993 is the biggest news story in Canada. Great memories last night that I will cherish as a longtime Jays fan. But we are asking, what is a sports moment that you have that's kind of etched in your memory forever? What's that sports moment in time that you will remember for the rest of your life? You know, that I remember when and where I was and what I was doing. Do you have a moment like that in your life? 1-833-668-2577. 32 years. And I mean, the poor Seattle Mariners. I mean, 49 years they've never been to the World Series in 49 years. Long-suffering Seattle Mariners fans last night. 8 outs away. Can you imagine being 8 outs away? All right, let's go to Wes is in Calgary. Wes. Hi, Wes.
Hey, Rob. How are you?
Very good, Wes. Yeah, a little tired today. You know, up late last night, but worth every minute of it. Yeah. Tell me a story, Wes.
Sure. I'm 72 years old, but I think my all-time favorite was the 72 summit with the Canadians versus Russia. Nothing will get better than that. Nothing.
You know, that was such an amazing thing. I was like barely a year old when that happened, 1972. I think what people have to remember, like that series, I mean, that was like a month-long national drama, wasn't it, Wes?
Oh, it was great. I was working as a young assistant accountant for the Royal Oak Hotel. And when they were playing in Russia, a lot of them were day games, you know. And I'd be watching the game in the hotel at Mary Mary's bar.
Oh yeah, yeah. A lot of productivity at the workplace fell when those games were on. There's no doubt, and there wasn't much happening in the classrooms of the nation either, because a lot of teachers just rolled the TV in and watched the games too, right? So,
yeah. But, you know, nobody thought they'd ever come back because they were down 4-0 before they were 4-1 until they went back to Russia, you know. So that was what made it really good, comeback.
Yeah.
Anyways, I just
so many moments
also, I wanted to point out that I'm an old diehard Expos fan, you know.
Me too, yeah.
And I stopped watching baseball after they folded. And my dad got me back into it in around 2015, you know, and I've been watching the Jays pretty steady since then. But let's talk last night.
Yeah.
I was surprised when Springer came up on the 7th. I thought they were going to give him a switch hitter. Because, you know, if you look at the night before, he was really struggling at the plate because of his knee, you know.
Because of his knee,
I said, oh, right. So obviously, Schneider knew something and nobody else did, so he put George in there, and it was good for him. And look what happened.
Yeah. Yeah, that was quite something.
I thought we were done.
Well, it wasn't looking great. It was looking like a repeat of the first game when they just kind of couldn't get anything going, you know, and the pitching on the other team was just shutting them down. But, gosh, I guess you just can't count them out.
Well, it's 3-1. I'm going, oh, God, here, it's the same replay as Game 5, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But this time, the whole thing switched around in 7th inning, too. Boom. God.
Boom.
Loved it.
Yeah. Great stuff. By the way, if you're a Montreal Expos fan, I grew up a Montreal Expos fan, and just like you, when they folded in 94, after 94, they had the best record in baseball, and the players went on strike, and that was kind of the end of it. There's a Netflix series that started streaming today called Who Killed the Montreal Expos? And I'm actually going to watch that after work today. I always wanted to know about that. Yeah, thank you, though. Good to hear from you, Wes. Yeah. Let's go to Larry's in Nova Scotia. Larry. Hi, Larry.
How you doing, brother?
Very good, Larry. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Sports, Larry. We're talking
as
sports
well.
today.
Great. I was the big one for me. I was in center field bleachers the first time the Jays clinched the East, and it was $4 ticket for the center field bleachers back in the day.
Wow.
And I still remember that. And my youngest son, was born October 24th, 1993. We were watching the game before Joe Carter hit his home run. My wife's water broke. We went to the hospital. We were walking the floors. Joe Carter hit the home run. Nurses and doctors came flying out of the rooms everywhere. We won. My wife said, "Great, let's have a baby." And so the